Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the Council of UC Staff Assemblies Summer Quarter Staff Town Hall. My name is Greta Carlalay, and I am the outgoing CUCSA Chair. I work at UC Santa Barbara, and I have 33 years of service. If you're not familiar with CUCSA, we're an assembly of volunteer staff dedicated to improving communications between UC administrators and staff. For the past 50 years, CUCSA's objective has been to provide service to the university by advising and providing a staff perspective to decision makers. Seen in this photo, CUCSA consists of 2 delegates from each UC campus, Agriculture and Natural Resources, Berkeley Laboratory, and the Office of the President. We act in the interest of all UC staff, particularly non-represented policy-covered staff, whose relationship with the university is governed by policy rather than the collective bargaining agreement. To begin, let us acknowledge the land where we work, live, and play. The Council of UC Staff Assemblies recognizes that our service occurs on the unceded territory of the Indigenous peoples of California, and that these lands were and continue to be of great importance to them. Every member of our community has and continues to benefit from the use and stewardship of these lands. With respect and gratitude, we acknowledge and make visible our relationship to the original caretakers. Today, our town hall will feature the 25-26 CUCSA work groups, Sustainable Workforce and Wellbeing. The work groups presented their findings and recommendations at our spring quarter meeting at UCSF last month. These presentations were recorded and posted to CUCSA's website, along with their final reports. We hope you had a chance to review the reports and videos in advance, but if not, we hope you enjoy the discussion and will be able to review the reports after this town hall. Today's event is being recorded and will be posted to CUCSA's YouTube and website shortly and shared out via our newsletter and social media. Each workgroup chair will provide a brief overview of their focus for the past year and their workgroup's recommendations. Incoming Chair Brian Light from UC Berkeley will facilitate discussion. I'd now like to introduce Jessica Belleri from UC Santa Cruz, Chair of CUCSA's Wellbeing Workgroup.
Thanks, Greta. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Belleri, and I am the Campus Health and Wellbeing Manager in the Office of Risk Services at UC Santa Cruz, where I have 7.5 years of service focusing on staff and faculty well-being. Our staff well-being work group this year included Kelsey Duff from UCLA, Lale Cote from Berkeley Lab, Mary Garcia from UC Irvine, Meenakshi Vedantam from UC Berkeley, and Kelly Breland from UC Merced. Our work group builds on more than 20 years of CUCSA work focused on improving well-being across the University of California system. In 2023 and 2024, CUCSA expanded the focus from personal wellness to well-being, which recognizes a broader framework that includes multiple pillars, including physical, mental, financial, social, community, and career well-being. With this framework, our workgroup examines staff well-being as a system-level determinant of workforce sustainability, employee engagement, and institutional effectiveness across the UC. We believe well-being should be the responsibility of the organization and not just the individual. Well-being is impacted by leadership, policies, and workplace culture, and is critical for addressing burnout, morale, and retention challenges. Based on our research and findings, our recommendations include utilizing flexible work arrangements more broadly to support staff well-being, retention, recruitment, morale, productivity, sustainability, and operational resilience, adopting the Okanagan Charter at all campus locations, and implemented systems and settings approach to improve well-being of staff, faculty, and students, and aligning campus and system-wide online well-being resources. For flexible work, current research reviewed by the workgroup indicated that flexible and hybrid work can support retention, morale, engagement, job satisfaction, and commute reduction when implemented with clear expectations and effective management. Conversely, broad return to office mandates may increase attrition risk, reduce morale, create supervisory strain, and produce limited productivity gains when they are not grounded in role-specific operational needs. Our recommendations are a two-pronged approach. At the system level, our recommendation is for Office of the President to establish clear guidelines for flexible work that create consistency and equity while still allowing campuses to manage their local operational needs. This means standardizing terminology, setting role-based eligibility criteria, and ensuring there are clear documentation standards, written explanations for denials, and a process for reconsideration. We also recommend providing supervisor training and collecting system-wide participation data, which can help inform future decisions. At the campus level, locations already have the authority to strengthen implementation. Campuses can publish clearer eligibility guidelines, standardize review processes, and ensure policies are applied consistently across similar roles. Additionally, we recommend campuses use flexible work arrangements as a sustainability tool to meet the university's sustainability goals. Flexible work can reduce commute trips, vehicle miles traveled, parking demand, transportation related emissions, and operational pressure on location infrastructure. Our work group focused on supporting CUCSA delegates and staff assemblies with practical tools, training, and cross-campus collaboration so we can identify strong practices and reduce fragmentation. We worked on a flexible work advocacy toolkit for staff assemblies to use on their campuses to promote flexible work arrangements as a tool to improve retention, equity, staff well-being, and sustainability. And this can be found in our report on our website. Our next recommendation is to have all campus locations adopt the Okanagan Charter. For those of you who don't know, the Okanagan Charter was written in 2015 at the International Conference on Health Promoting Universities and Colleges that took place on the Okanagan campus of the University of British Columbia, which is why it's called the Okanagan Charter. It's a public health framework that provides institutions with a common language, guiding principles, and a framework on how to become a health promoting university, which is an international identity for universities who formally adopt the charter and aspire to infuse health into all that they do, create a campus culture of compassion, well being, equity, and social justice, improve the health of the people who live, learn, work, and play there, and strengthen the ecological, social, and economic sustainability of our communities and wider society. The Okanagan Charter has two calls to action. One is to embed health into all aspects of campus culture across the administration, operations, and academic mandates. This requires us to look at everything UC does with a health and well-being lens and asking the question, does this policy, practice, or physical environment promote health and well-being, or is it a barrier to health and well-being? And second, it calls for the university to lead health promotion action and collaborate both locally and globally to set an example and advance research in the area. CUCSA is requesting Office of the President endorse system-wide adoption of the Okanagan Charter. This endorsement would align and amplify existing well-being related initiatives and work groups, assist in developing shared outcome-oriented indicators and assessment approaches, and support streamlined reporting and cross-campus learning. Over time, we'd like Office of the President to support campuses in building sustainable coordination and governance structures, dedicated implementation capacity where needed, shared expectations while preserving local flexibility, and most importantly, a common institutional commitment to health and well-being. CUCSA's Okanagan Charter work focuses on building system-wide momentum through broader campus adoption. Each additional adoption reinforces UC's collective commitment to well-being and helps create the conditions for shared practice, alignment, and sustained leadership attention. While adoption establishes the commitment, it's implementation that embeds the charter into campus policies, partnerships, resources, and decision-making. And lastly, to support well-being goals across the UC system, we recommend that individual locations and system-wide resources like UCNet consolidate various well-being resources into a central landing page to allow users to access all of the content at a particular location from one place. We also recommend the use of AI tools as research assistants to save time and locate online content that might be outdated. There are also some locations that highlight how well-being programs support institutional goals and make the business case for staff well-being, which is helpful to leadership and staff developing and championing well-being initiatives. Our work group found so many amazing well-being initiatives happening at UC, and these recommendations will ensure that staff can efficiently locate and use all of these resources. So those were our work group's focus areas and recommendations. I'll now pass it over to Brian to facilitate our discussion.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. So we've got about 15 minutes to ask questions of this group. Please raise your hand or put it in the chat. We'll go ahead and try and get to all your questions. I'm learning to lean into the silence. Matt, please. I see your hand up. What do you got?
Hey, Brian, I'm just curious on this as well as the upcoming presentations that are going to be made during this town hall. Where do you stand in terms of UC embracing adoption of these recommendations, and how are they being received and adopted across the system?
Thank you for that question. Jessica, you have some thoughts?
So for the Okanagan Charter specifically, I actually lead a UC Okanagan Charter work group, and it's something that all the campuses who have adopted and still have not adopted meet and share best practices and go over any barriers that they're facing. It is something that I think at least every campus has one or two delegates on that work group that are interested in adopting, and they're working on getting campus leadership involved in making those decisions as well. I know the executive board had presented to Office of the President and President Milliken, and he's interested in learning more about the Okanagan Charter too, which I think is a really, really positive sign. So I think we're making really good strides in getting this adopted on our campuses. I know some campuses are close to adoption again or soon. So I think it's coming. But yeah, as far as the other ones, we're sharing the flexible work resource with our staff assemblies and CUCSA delegates to take it to their campuses because we feel that the campuses are in the best place to do that advocacy work rather than top down because each campus is so different and how they have their policies around flexible work arrangements. So it's more of an advocacy effort there and getting staff assemblies involved. Did that answer your question?
Jessica, I can just share one thing related to the online resources. Our work group has received several messages from different UC locations that they have looked at our work group's report about possible ways to update their online resources. And so we do know that folks are accessing that online through the CUCSA website.
Great. And I see we
Okay.
have a question in the chat. Shall I answer that, Brian?
Yeah, I was gonna say we have a question in the chat, and then I saw Jose raised his hand. So hit the question in the chat, and then
Perfect. So we have a question. Office of the President is also a workplace for staff. Is it included in recommendations for campus adoption? Laura, I think you're talking about the Okanagan Charter, but so I'll answer to that, but correct me if I'm wrong. So the Office of the President, yes, is included in what we're hoping to at least do the policies and systems and settings work for improving well-being at each of our campuses and locations. The Okanagan Charter, it was specifically designed for universities and college campuses. However, the framework is universal. So it's something that we look when we talk about systems and settings. I don't know if we can go to slide 64 and 65. I think this would be a good slide to look at as I answer this question. All the way at the bottom. So this is the system settings and systems approach that really is what makes the Okanagan Charter really powerful for our well-being of our entire community. So if you'll see, like midstream is kind of where we are with programs and services, which we do really well on all of our campuses. We have wellness managers at all of our campuses. We have student um, wellness centers on all of our campuses as well. But our locations that are not campuses, we can still do the upstream upstream approaches like policy, regulation, culture, norms, and practices. Those are things like health and all policy work. We can do that at all of our campuses and locations, and that will have a vast impact on everyone. Something I'm really excited about this kind of approach is with the midstream efforts like health education wellness programs, we're really only focusing on folks who know about the programs and are interested to attend, whereas things like a systems and settings approach with policy and practices and creating norms and culture, that impacts literally everyone on our campuses and at every location. Um, and just a quick, if you want to go to slide 65, this is what we're talking about, the difference between well-being and wellness, with wellness being super person centric and well-being is the ecosystem, the place, what we have for economic systems, sustainability systems. So this will impact everyone. And we have a really great example already, which is the health and all policies rework of the sustainability policy, where they look at chemicals of concern and healthy beverage vending or healthy beverage initiative and healthy vending initiative. Those impact the place and that can impact everyone. So even if the U.S. Health Promoting Campus Network, which is the network that is the U.S. branch of the International Health Promoting Campus Network, if they don't recognize, say, Office of the President or Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, we can still adopt these principles to make the staff healthier at those locations as well.
All right, we've got two more questions in the chat. Looks like three now. So I'll read them off to you so that everybody who can hear what they are. Have you discussed the UC Berkeley Work Fit program and how to bring the online version back to contribute to all of the UC's wellness?
I'm not familiar with the UC Berkeley Work Fit program. Is that something that was there and is no longer there?
Yeah, it's something that we had that was kind of run by staff assembly. So it makes sense that perhaps you didn't get into that as part of a wellness process, which is fine to say. A second question that came directly to me, I guess what we would say is WorkFit didn't get investigated, but it's good to bring it up because it could be useful. Question directly to me, curious if the flex work policies and conditions for flexible work are widely variable across campuses, especially when many companies are urging employees to return to in-office work.
They are. I believe Meenakshi is on the call too. If Meenakshi, do you want to take this one?
Yes, I can speak to that. Yes, we did review the practices across campuses, and they are varied. Depending on how it is being implemented. It's being left to the local campuses to determine how they want to implement it. At this point, we've just put in some of the guidelines for what we see as good recommendations that will help bring some standardization. But the immediate tool that we have also offered is a flexible work advocacy toolkit that staff assemblies can use to sort of bring this awareness across campuses and their staff to see how they can look at it in a better way and implement it in a holistic manner. So that is, I think, does that answer your question?
I think we have a sort of accidental follow-up as well. The next question in the chat, and then we'll go to Amy. Do you see a UC-wide flexible work scheduling plan being implemented? And if so, what is the time frame?
I think we've talked to our UCOP partners on this, and I think it would be really hard to implement a UC-wide policy on flexible work. each of the campuses have to handle their operations differently. So I think it's up to the campuses to really do that work and figure out what flexible work policy, schedule, whatever framework will work for that campus, which is why we've created the toolkit for campus use and not so much for like system-wide use, um, because each campus has very different and different in-person work needs and otherwise.
Okay, we have a little more than 5 minutes left. Amy, please ask your question.
Thank you. So, I wanted to ask whether the Wellbeing Initiative is considering some of the operational issues that contribute to staff stress. For example, reduced access to in-person or synchronous training can make it harder for staff to learn complex processes and feel supported. And I'm also wondering whether there is any focus on improving beginning to end campus processes, since unclear or fragmented processes can leave lower level staff carrying more of the responsibility for figuring things out and resolving issues.
Yeah, that's a great question. That we didn't specifically look at operational issues like that in our work group. I believe that might have been touched on in other work groups. Um, but we do understand that is definitely an issue right now. In terms of you mentioned something about in-person training versus online training. That wasn't an area of our focus either. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
not
something.
just online, but synchronous, right? Like most of the trainings now are moving to, it's not just that they're online,
Oh,
it's
I
that
see.
they're pre-recorded so you don't have any interaction with anybody.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's not something we explored in the well-being work group, but that's a really good point. It's not something I was familiar that was happening, but definitely something that we can look into in the next year. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, I see we have another question in the chat, which is, would there be an opportunity to share wellness resources across campus?
Yeah, thank you for that. So we have a work group called the Wellness Managers Work Group, which me as a wellness manager, I'm a part of it too. So it's separate from CUCSA, but all the wellness managers from each campus and location meet monthly to talk about any kind of online webinars that we're hosting. Not all of them can be implemented across the system. There are parameters. For example, at UC Santa Cruz, I host mental health uh, a workplace mental health training for supervisors and managers. And that's a program that we purchased, and with our contract with the company, or actually it was university um, that created that program, it has to only be available at UC Santa Cruz. So they would require other campuses to pay for it. However, if it's something in-house, like we have a health and well-being specialist on our campus that actually creates and like writes the training and makes it available online. Excuse me, like synchronous Zoom meetings that sometimes is available for other campuses to join in. It's just there are some that just with Zoom requirements and max participation. It is something that the wellness manager work group is looking for more opportunities to do that. Um, so it's definitely something that we're talking about in the wellness managers work group, because I think that is a really good way to kind of amplify all of our individual programs and make it available at other locations.
All right, we've got about enough time for one more question. Does anybody have one they want to kick in before I hand it off to our next work group? All right. Then I think if we have some time at the end, we can get some more questions in. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you and your whole team. You guys did a fantastic job. Not an easy concept to really dig into and have a good conversation about. So definitely appreciate you on that. Now I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Kristen to talk about our sustainable workforce group. So, Kristen, please take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Ikeda Yoza, and I'm the Writing and Languages Program Director for Campus Learning Assistance Services at UCSB, with 6.5 years of service. I'd like to start by introducing my workgroup members: Rebecca Fernandez from UC Office of the President, Jeff Heiser from UC Davis, Paige Mejia from UC Riverside, Javier Miramontes from UC A&R, and Katie Urbanowicz from UC Berkeley. Over the past year, our cross-location team has investigated the critical operational and cultural stressors affecting UC staff. Today, we will share a summary of our insights and actionable recommendations. A brief overview of our focus was to proactively seek guidance and solutions to support staff in balancing their workload responsibilities, find and promote practical tools and actionable strategies that allow staff and supervisors to identify and mitigate overwork, technology to enhance and streamline processes, and to ensure the university comprehends the effects of growth, hiring freezes, and budget cuts on staff. Our work group built 2 concrete deliverable items to address that were addressed in our recommendations. And the first is the Department Capacity and Prioritization Worksheet. It features a mission critical matrix to map out duties, manage change, and streamline processes within the department. It also introduces a draft light protocol that you see on the screen slide now, where green signals a stable staffing, focus on regular projects and work. And then when we move to yellow, it will signal tighter resources, a possible pause on some projects, a shift to communication of extended response times. For example, if there's a deadline that's coming up, like the end of fiscal year, and we are trying to get those tasks done, that might be a time when we enact a yellow mode. And then finally, there is a time when a department might hit a red mode due to vacancies or budget constraints, for example. The manager has an objective pre-approved framework to officially pause non-essential services and move on to more important work. It also includes a compliance check to ensure we don't accidentally breach any other rules, policies, contracts, grants, anything like that. On this next slide, this is the one-on-one tool that focuses on psychological safety rather than numerical output. This is a tool that would be used between a staff member and their supervisor, and it points to addressing their concerns, building a supportive action plan, reviewing goals, talking about career development, and encouraging two-way communication. It allows for staff members and supervisors to come together to create a plan if somebody is feeling that their workload is a lot. But it also has a way to check back in and make sure the programs and plans that they've made are working, and if not, to make adjustments as needed. Now, starting with some of our recommendations, one of our first ones here is after a review of 8 UC campuses as well as UC Office of the President, where we evaluated resources available to staff and also communicated with campus HR. A few of the things that we found were missing were or found gaps in were undocumented and unresolved workload concerns. There wasn't a direct path or a way for those to be communicated with any resources that were currently available. Inequitable workload distribution based on individual supervisor styles, heightened risk of burnout and turnover, which is essentially critical during current staff shortages and budget constraints. Our operational recommendations regarding managing workload capacity are trying to be highly cost effective. So looking at things like, instead of making brand new initiatives, we want to work on recommending existing systems that are already in place, like system-wide policies and training to encourage professional development that aligns with the UC's goals for continuous learning and workplace development. There's also a need for executive leadership to visibly endorse frameworks, for example, like the traffic light protocol or the matrix mentioned previously, so that managers feel like scaling back services or streamlining processes when they're faced with constraints to workflow are acceptable to make. Use of the standardized one-on-one meeting or check-in templates, such as the one that we created to offer supervisors a tool to help guide their meetings with staff and give both sides a way to communicate. And then the last one is to provide equal access to AI tools system-wide. We did a survey and looked at all the different tools that are available on every campus and trying to find a way to implement guidelines to approve AI tools for safe elimination of administrative toil without creating cybersecurity vulnerabilities is very important, as well as making a checklist for Gen AI tools like Gemini to help staff make sure they are automated repetitive tasks safely. All right. During our research on professional development, we found a fascinating contradiction we call the value gap. The UC has an abundance of professional development courses, yet staff confidence in their long-term career progression at the UC was at 11% lower than the national average. A possible reason is because supervisors act as the primary key when it comes to professional development. If a manager doesn't explicitly support growth, an employee is 58% more likely to look for a job outside the UC. Staff feel like they don't have permission to use the professional development release time that they have. So our recommendations in this area are to structuralize career support across the UC system. We recommend deploying standardized CHRO email templates during annual review season that explicitly normalize the use of PPSM 50 release time for policy covered staff. And this removes the burden from the employee and signals from the top down support of professional development. We also need to expand benchmarking. We recommend that we should partner directly with workforce planning to move their existing plans forward, specifically by implementing unified assessment platforms. This allows staff to objectively map their technical skills, particularly in emerging areas like AI, and receive personalized coaching paths. We also recommend integrating the experience conversation and coaching modules as weighted required metrics in the annual performance reviews of all UC supervisors. By holding managers accountable for their team's growth, we moved development from a nice to have to a core institutional policy. And our final part of our workgroup summary today is that after completing an assessment of job boards across the UC system, we found that public-facing data does not always reflect real-time hiring activity. What we recommend is conducting some stakeholder listening sessions with HR and hiring managers to kind of get more feedback on the processes across the system, implementing automatic reminders for required documentation if it's at all possible, exploring ways we could maybe use Gen AI supported workflow notifications if approved for the hiring process. And then if it's possible, adding either under offer or selection made to the posting statuses, just so that people looking at the job boards would have a better idea of which jobs are actually actively looking for their next positions. These steps would improve alignment between compliance processes and public-facing job board accuracy. And that's the conclusion of my summary, and I'm going to pass it back to Brian to facilitate our discussion.
All right, thank you, Kristen. So we got about 20-ish minutes for some conversation. It can primarily, let's start out focused on what Kristen shared with us, but we can also go back to some issues with well-being as well. And I see we have I think it's more of a comment than a question, but in the chat, we should also have equal access to programs. I know UCOP always wants each campus to choose what they want, but this doesn't help staff. With the implementation of Oracle and the chart of accounts, for example, we are still all doing reports and things differently depending on what each campus chose for reporting, or if one campus paid for extra features and another campus couldn't. This really affects our frontline staff who are struggling to do their jobs. Fair point.
That's a really good point, Nicole, and I would definitely pass that on if Sustainable Workforce is a group that continues in the next year. We did make a sort of similar recommendation about making training at least available, because a lot of different campuses and locations in the UC system do have lots of training that's already available and made that could be used across multiple locations. And I think that your point here really builds on the not only the need for cross campus and location training, but also looking at the programs and systems we use as well.
And I will add that we have an ongoing conversation about trying to harmonize some of the trainings across the campuses as well. So that is something that is being actively discussed. Do we have any more questions? Matt, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Brian. When you set aside all the issues that the university has to deal with, including the federal and state activities, President Milliken's next highest priority is AI. He's established an AI council, set aside $10 million to implement recommendations over time. How are you floating up your recommendations along the lines of AI up to him and through to his council?
I have met with Van Williams, and I also have talked with people on my campus that are also a part of AI work groups in the system-wide level. And so that is one way of kind of making sure that the things that we are recommending actually also make sense. I think that the president definitely gets a copy of this report and will be able to see the recommendations that we've laid out, and our campus partners as well will see the recommendations that we've made specifically around AI. Because I do really think it's important that we all learn how to use it, and at the same time make sure that we're using it in a safe manner with all the data that we have on our campuses.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad to hear that, because I've championed at the Regents meetings the need for standardized staff training on this. If we continue to do AI as a DIY activity, we're not going to get there.
It leads us open to a lot of security issues and other unforeseen problems.
Thanks.
And unintended bills for violating things like contracts. All right. So next, Amy, please ask your question.
Hello. So has there been any discussion about whether staff development should be more centralized at the campus level? In many cases, an employee's next career step may not be within their current department. That means that their current manager may not have the knowledge, connections, or context to help them prepare for the next role they are qualified to move into. Should we be thinking about staff as belonging to the campus as a whole rather than only to their current department? So professional development is better aligned with long-term growth across the campus.
That is a great question, Amy. It is something that we did look into, and I definitely agree. It's not to hold you in your department or in your current role, and to definitely look outside of it. And I think it is, and you're right, it is hard because not every supervisor knows everything to connect you. So in some ways, I think that like the benchmarking and skill assessment recommendations can really help in that area. Because as a staff person, I know that I need to up my AI skills, but doesn't necessarily mean my supervisor is going to know where to direct me. And so thinking of ways that we can incorporate that more into professional development too, is you as a staff person being able to think about what you might want to do, as well as a supervisor having more access, especially if we are able to get a platform where all campuses can share their information, and you might be able to look at that information by like some of the like different pillars that we use for staff on campuses, or even by job function. You might be able to sort out like, oh, if I want to move to this different position, those are some skills I might want to work on. I think that's a great point.
Thank you.
Well, we still have time for more questions. Looks like one just popped in the chat. To what extent do the current staff development recommendations account for equity in financial resource allocation?
Ooh, that one I don't know. I don't know that one so well, Ashley. I think that it definitely, if we can make a platform that is accessible to everyone, it could alleviate some of that resource allocation. Some campuses could access other programs at different campuses or locations that maybe they don't have pre-built on their own. So in that way, I think it could definitely help. I think that is a great point to move to the future to look into more also.
Yeah, it's also a hard one because each campus has so many varieties, each department has so many variables. Good question. Do we have other questions? We still got about 13 minutes. And I should say this explicitly. If you want to put in a question and just direct it to me, I will read it out. So, if you got a controversial one, you don't want your name attached to it, we see you, we feel you. Okay, I see I have another question here. What are CUCSA's priorities for next year? So I guess that one goes to me. I can't pass that one up. So I think I am still finalizing what the two work groups are for sure. I can tell you that there are some places, things like tuition remission, that we're going to be following up on, things like trying to standardize some of the training across the UCs. Those are things we're going to continue to champion. Things we are going to work on directly. I know we are definitely working on taking the uh, survey information that we get. Hopefully, many or most of you saw and took the survey. If you did not take it by last week, they did extend it till the 10th. So you have an opportunity to go in there, take that survey. We're going to take the results of that. We're also going to look at some of the surveys that have been done locally at various campuses and start trying to see trends in staff concerns and try and start addressing those. So a big part of what I plan on doing this year is one piece of it is building the context for where we're moving on in the future. Also, for many of you, you may not realize how complicated last year was. We had a lot of people get accreted. We had a number of significant positions. I mean, that's part of the reason I'm here is all these accretions changed a lot of things. So we're trying to go ahead and recover from that and be able to build our momentum with even having lost so much last year. So that is definitely another piece of it. And finally, I do know that one of the things we're going to be looking at is staff recognition across the campuses and sort of which ones are impactful, maybe some that aren't as impactful, and try and make some recommendations on how to try and improve staff morale. All right, I've got a couple more questions that have popped up into the chat. We've got one that says they're curious about CUCSA's position on policy covered staff. I understand, hearsay only, that the percentage of represented employees will increase significantly. So, yes, this is true. CUCSA's position on policy covered staff, I don't know that I have a good answer, but I'll let other people jump in. But that based on the way we are designed, that is the people that we work with and directly advocate for, although a lot of stuff that we do does help system-wide, any staff member. However, you are correct. With all the accretions and changes, we expect that there will be more jobs added over the next year and a half or so. So related to that, Greta or anybody else, you want to jump in before I read the next question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what exactly it means. What is our position on policy covered staff? That is what CUCSA is. Our delegation is non-represented staff. That is how the bylaws are written. And we had a very lengthy discussion for the entire year between CUCSA and staff assemblies about how does the number of accretions that are happening impact us. The way it impacts us is that we have less volunteers. Our volunteer pool is becoming very shallow. And so we have less people to step up to be on staff assembly and then to be on CUCSA. But when we really thought about it, we came to the realization and understanding that CUCSA is the only system-wide staff group that speaks for non-represented staff. And we have access to leadership at OP and at our locations because we are non-represented and we can have these kinds of conversations with them. So after much discussion, we had a vote and it was decided that we would keep our bylaws the same, that we would not change to include represented employees at this time. Because even if we get to the point where there's only 10% of 10% of non-represented employees system-wide, those 10% still need a voice, and CUCSA is that voice for them. But that's a great question. Thank you. And I see someone asked about how can you volunteer. Thank you for everybody who is answering. Yes, start with your staff assembly at your location. Every location has a staff assembly except for Berkeley Lab, but they have employee resource groups, and they also have CUCSA delegates. So please reach out to your staff assembly.
And there was a question that came in about the who the engagement survey came from. So I put in the email in the chat. So if you don't think you saw it, go ahead and look, check your spam filters. Sometimes weird things happen. All right, we got another question. Is there any update progress on dependent tuition remission? I will take the first stab at this and then Greta can jump in. We are continuing to have that conversation. And in fact, next week at the Regents meeting, that is one of the things that we will talk to the Regents about. Tuition remission is something that CUCSA is definitely going to continue trying to push for and continue trying to advocate for. We are in a situation with a new president, so there are some ways in which progress that we made under President Drake is no longer counted on, and we're building a new set of conversations with President Milliken, but still we are actively engaging in that.
Yes, I think that covers it. We wrote a briefing to the president and we're trying to get those conversations, keep them going. And it is part of the discussion that Brian and I will have at our Regents presentation next week.
All right, we got a couple more questions that have popped into here, and let me scroll up. Are there discussions about creating more opportunities for staff to connect and collaborate across campuses in staff-led or peer-to-peer ways, rather than only through top-down centralized initiatives? For example, could there be more support for communities of practice, cross-campus working groups, or peer learning spaces where staff in similar roles can share processes, tools, and lessons learned? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I can start us off. I think that's a great idea, and I think that in CUCSA itself, we started one for mentorship programs for staff across the system and the locations, and so that's definitely one thing. One area where we started it on our own campus. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about doing something similar for our campus. And I definitely think that is something we could include as a recommendation because I think it's really important too. I know for me, being in student affairs and in a learning center environment, I do connect with my peers at other UC locations. And there was already a group that did it themselves. So I think sometimes too, it's just finding the right person who might know if there's that resource across. But yeah, that's a great idea as well that I think it could pass to HR.
If I can add,
Oh yeah.
the UC Okanagan Charter Work Group was not created by top down. It was created when I presented at UCLA to other people interested in the UC Okanagan, adopting the Okanagan Charter. And I asked, hey, would it be of interest for you guys if we created a work group and started meeting bi-monthly? And they said yes. So if you're interested, I would definitely recommend, if you know folks or do some searching on other campuses for folks in your job title or department or whatever, and start reaching out to them and asking if it would be beneficial, because a work group doesn't have to be mandated. It can just be, at your level created, and I think that can be really helpful too.
I just wanted to let you know, Jessica, that I'm actually on system-wide AMP. I think that we're trying to do a lot of these things as well, and I'm trying to get as involved on campus as possible. because I think that it's really important for the staff groups that we do have to kind of seek each other out and try to support each other in best ways possible. So I'm all for that, and thank you for that.
Definitely.
All right. I see a comment in here that I want to go ahead and highlight, and then I've got a question that was sent directly to me. But Amit, thank you for being here. And he posts, this is a comment rather than a question. Since Sustainable Workforce Group referenced staff to student ratio, he wanted to share this resource, the Academic Staffing Ratios Dashboard on UC Information Center. And the takeaway is our staff employees support not only students, but also faculty. So we try never to forget that, but thank you for highlighting that. We appreciate, again, like I said, appreciate you being here and commenting. All right, question that was sent. Are there any plans to discuss gaining wins for non-represented staff, such as the cap on healthcare costs, parking rate caps, an additional personal holiday, etc., as included in the recently ratified CX contracts? Yes, there are some ongoing conversations along those, and we definitely are regularly talking with our UCOP HR partners about the fact that these contracts have influence in terms of morale, in terms of retention on our staff. And so there is a conversation about some of these for sure. Of course, certain things like parking rates get super complicated depending on which campus you're at, where other things like floating personal holidays are probably something that we can have really in-depth conversations about. Um, I will say, Greta, do you want to add anything into this particular conversation?
Yeah, I would just add that, yes, that is exactly CUCSA's job, and it's what we do all the time. We have been banging this drum about fair, equitable, and predictable salary increases for non-represented staff every time salary increases come around, because we don't want to be forgotten as decisions are made, because obviously for contracts that is set what people are going to get. And so, yes, we have this conversation all the time that as we see these things happening, what is going to be done for non-represented staff to keep things equitable.
And I don't know about the rest of you, but signing bonuses would be nice too. But like I said, we are having those conversations. It's just hard. All right, one other question I see right here, and they made an amendment. So MSAP was a great UCOP program that brought people together from all campuses, but it did not return after COVID. It was for professional development, but gave lots of networking opportunities. So I'm going to say that seems like a comment, but I don't know if Chris or anybody else has
Yeah, I'll
something to add to
comment
that.
on that. I'll comment to that because actually someone came to CUCSA and asked if we could support helping bringing MSAP back. And it really came down to resources, that there really weren't any resources at any location. It was on one location to be carrying MSAP for the entire system, and they just didn't have the bandwidth or the resources to continue it. And it just did not seem that there was anywhere that had the resources to be able to bring it back. But we absolutely agree, and this was something that CUCSA explored this year.
Okay, we are just about out of time. I have one last thing I'm going to mention, and we did have one quick question specifically for the well-being work group. So one thing I didn't mention that we were going to continue to advocate this year is also for the staff food pantry access and trying to get resources for that. Final question. Is for the well-being work group. Are we expecting another increase in the employee cost of health insurance in November? If yes, what are we doing to mitigate those increases for next year? And
I do not know the answer to that. I think that would be a system-wide HR question.
yeah, and I think one of the things to know is that we do try and get staff representation on these kind of conversations when they have work groups that are looking at things like healthcare. We try and get somebody from CUCSA involved so that we get that two-way dialogue and that those committees have staff representation on it. So there are some things we do not know, but I have reached out to one of our HR partners to start this conversation as early as September about benefits changes and all that kind of stuff. So with this, I will pass it to Greta to close us out.
Great. Thank you. So thank you everyone for your attention and participation in today's town hall. Thank you to our work group chairs and the delegation for all their work this year, tackling the topics of well-being and sustainable workforce. I want to take this time to also acknowledge and thank our engagement and community work group. They focused on strengthening connection, communication, and collaboration across CUCSA and staff assemblies at each location. And because the work group's recommendations were intended for CUCSA's executive board consideration and are focused on internal coordination across staff assemblies, a recording was not produced for this presentation, but you can see their final report on our website. As mentioned previously, the video recording for today's town hall will be posted to CUCSA's YouTube and website shortly and shared out via our newsletter and social media. Next Wednesday, Brian and I will present CUCSA's 25-26 year-end report at the Board of Regents meeting. We're on the agenda for Wednesday, July 15th at 8:30 a.m. following public comment and the remarks from the student associations. As we wrap up the 25-26 year, it's my pleasure to introduce the 2026-27 Executive Board. Welcome Brian as the chair, Mike McCormick from UCLA as chair-elect, and Meenakshi Vedantam from UC Berkeley as our external communications officer, and I will become the immediate past chair. We will be electing a new internal operations officer in the coming months. I'd like to acknowledge Jen Bowser, our outgoing external communications officer and immediate past chair, and Zoe Balester Reynolds, our outgoing internal operations officer, for all their support of CUCSA this year. If you haven't already, I encourage you to sign up for the UCAN Advocacy Network, also for the UC Advocacy Network, also known as UCAN. As shown on the screen, UCAN provides a template for contacting your legislators. Simply enter your information, review the message, and send. Anyone interested in advocating for the University of California at the state and federal levels is encouraged to participate in their campaigns. The collective outreach of the UC community through UCAN has helped advance important conversations around issues such as state funding, research, and housing. By taking a minute to sign up, you'll be ready to participate in future advocacy campaigns on issues that impact all of us across the UC system. Every message helps amplify the voice of the UC community. You can stay connected with CUCSA by visiting our link tree to follow us on social media, subscribe to our e-newsletter, or access our YouTube channel, and more. Thank you for your support of the university's mission of research, teaching, and public service. And thank you for attending today's CUCSA all-staff town hall. We appreciate your time and engagement and look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, remember to be kind to yourself and to others. Thank you.